So now, let's look into the different attack actions that you can perform during a game of Scarper. The first and probably easiest attack action you can take is the steady push. The steady push is an action to slowly move the front line towards your opponent's end of the battlefield. So to move the front line, if there's no trenches, will require you to spend 1 command point for every space that you move up on the battlefield. However, if you encounter enemy trenches and you want to remove these with a steady push, you'll have to spend 2 command points to remove 1 trench. Then, if you really want to move on this battlefield, for example, you'll have to spend 2 more command points to move the second trench, and then you could move for 1 command point each into the spaces thus cleared. So in this example, to remove the 2 trenches and to move 1 space would cost a total of 5 command points. Now the second type of attack you can place is what's called a frontal charge. A frontal charge works as follows. Firstly, you declare on which battlefield you'd like to make the attack. A frontal charge will always cost 2 command points, unless it's an event, as explained on an event card. After the battlefield has been declared, both players roll a die. Then they add modifiers to their roll. Then it's determined whether the attacker won or the defender won. The modifiers for a frontal attack are as follows. The attacker receives bonuses based on the relative position of the front line on adjacent battlefields. So let's say we find the front line as it stands here. The Germans are making good progress on the Marne, but they've been pushed back slightly at Verdun. So if they make a frontal charge at Verdun, they get a bonus based on their relative position on the adjacent battlefields. So in this case, Marne and Metz. The bonus is calculated as follows. For every adjacent battlefield on which the attacker is 1 space closer to the opponent's end of the battlefield, they receive +1 to their roll. For every adjacent battlefield where they're more than 1 field closer to the opponent's end of the battlefield, they receive +2. So in this case, if the Germans were to place a frontal charge at Verdun, they would get +1 for their relative position at Metz, and then +2 for their relative position on the Marne. The idea there being thematically that the Allies have created a bulge here, which makes it easier for the Germans to attack the battlefield at Verdun from different directions. Now, a defender can also receive bonuses, and that's based on the number of trenches they have on any place on the battlefield. So maybe adjacent to where the battle takes place, or maybe further back. Now, the defender receives +1 to their roll for every 2 trenches they have anywhere on the battlefield. So in this case, the Allied, if there was a German attack at Verdun, have a total of 3 trenches on the battlefield, and thus receive a bonus of +1 to their roll. If they would have another trench, let's say here, they would receive a +2 to their roll, because now they have a total of 4 trenches on the battlefield at Verdun. So let's stick with this example of a German attack at Verdun. Let's say the Germans roll a 3. They add their relative bonus based on their position on the adjacent battlefields. So we said 1 for their position on Metz and 3 for their position on the Marne. So their total value would be a 6. Let's say the Allies roll a 2. They get bonuses for their trenches on the Verdun battlefield. We said a total bonus of 2, 1 for every 2 trenches they have. So their total value would be 4. Now, it's clear that the Germans have won this battle by a difference of 2. So their movement value is 2, which is resolved as follows. First, the space needs to be emptied. So now they have a movement value of 1. Then they can move into that empty space. And thus, they have resolved their 2 points of movement value. So So let's now imagine that instead of the rolls we just had, the German player rolled a 1 and the Allied player rolled a 4. Again, the same modifiers apply. The German player gets +3 to their roll for a total of 4. The Allied player gets +2 to their roll for a total of 6. So in this case, it's clear that the attack was not successful. What is done then is the difference, which is 2, is resolved on the propaganda track. Now this is a propaganda success for the Allies. So they move their propaganda marker 1 up. Then, for the next step, the German marker is moved 1 down. This is very bad news for them and can be used against them at home. That's how you resolve a frontal charge in case the defender wins. Now, if, for example, at the beginning of this battle, both players already had -2 and we have the same roll, same outcome, we would still move the Allied marker 1 place up, but then we cannot move the German player's marker 1 space down. So that would be the end result. The final attack action you can place is the concentrated assault. To place a concentrated assault, declare on which battlefield you'd like to make this attack. You reveal your event card, and specifically you look at the command value. Then the attacker rolls a d3. So d3 is a regular d6, but the value is halved. So 1 is a 1, a 2 is a 1, a 3 and a 4 are a 2, a 5 and a 6 are a 3. You roll this, and you add the d3 to the command value of the card you just played. So in this case, your d3 would be a 2 plus 3 is a movement value of 5. Now the movement value is resolved as follows. For each trench that you thus cleared, you lower your movement value by 1. So you start, in this example, with a movement value of 5, so 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And thus the movement value would be resolved. Then the attacker loses morale equal to the d3 that they rolled. So in this case, the German player, although very successful in this attack because of the heavy losses that we imagine took place because of this concentrated attack, now lose 2 morale. So a concentrated assault is a costly way in which you can force movement back onto a battlefield. Okay, so let's look into an example of scoring. Let's say after the year of Scarper, this is what the board looks like. The front line here has not really moved, but in the north we see that the Allies have made inroads on the Ypres and Arras battlefields, and the Germans have made a slight push on the Somme battlefield. So let's count this up. The Allies score 1, 2 points. So we move the marker 2 points towards the Allied end of the morale track, 1, 2. However, the Germans have also scored 1 point. So we'll move the marker 1 space back towards the German end. Then we look at the other tracks. So on the propaganda track, we can see that the Allies have done a great job. So they score 3 points, whereas the Germans score 0 points. So we move the marker 3 spaces towards the Allied end of the morale track. 1, 2, 3. Now on the economic track, we can see that the Germans did a good job. So first we'll move the marker 1 space towards the Allied end, because they did score 1 point. And then we'll move it 3 points towards the German end. 1, 2, 3. So overall, in the end of this year, the Allies were able to move the morale marker 2 spaces towards their end of the morale track. Then at the top of the next round, we move the propaganda track back to 0, but we do not touch the economic track. So guys, I believe those are the rules for Scarper. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it's helpful. I hope you guys learned how to play, and I really hope you guys enjoy playing the game. Thank you so much.